Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. We've been hearing a lot of anecdotal information about banking in Thailand, and I have received correspondence from folks who have said, look, I've been talking to our banks and they're saying there's nothing wrong. You know, I'm not naming any one bank. I'm not going to get into all of that. But what I'm saying is, right now, I'm tending to view the anecdotal evidence with more veracity, if you will, than maybe, I'm not saying the banks are lying, but what I'm saying is, you know, they may be engaging in PR. They don't really want it sort of known that there are folks that they're scrutinizing their accounts and they may be shutting them down. But I have been told by a very reputable source, someone who works closely with me oftentimes, and they have told me that, yeah, in fact, there have been incidents where there's been scrutiny of banking activity in a bank account, especially involving foreigners, and they will go in and it may not even involve banking activity. They'll go in and scrutinize, because everything's digitized now. This is also the big downside of all this digitization. They're able to quickly see who's got a bank account with a tourist visa. And there are some folks that'll come in, have a tourist visa, get a bank account, and then go ahead and convert over to some other type of visa. For example, retirement visa or a business visa or something of this nature. And then, so what's happening is the banks are calling these folks back in and they're saying, hey, do you still have a tourist visa? If you don't, you have a non-immigrant visa, apparently they're saying, okay, you're good to go. If you still have a tourist visa, they're shutting these bank accounts down. That's what we're hearing about anecdotally. That said, what is the ostensible reason for this? Well, apparently the pretext is that they are trying to eliminate quote-unquote scam accounts. Now, I've talked about this at length. People forget this. Money laundering was not a thing until 1987. In 1987, in the United States, the term money laundering was codified into law, and they created a rule where basically moving money to obfuscate its source or storing it or whatever, basically using money in such a way that it obfuscates its source, can be deemed money laundering. My personal opinion is, if you go back and look at all of that, frankly, I think it all should be repealed. You know, people have a right to privacy. What they do with their money is their own business. If the government cannot make a case for criminal activity against somebody for the actual overt activity, they don't get to play like we're all Al Capone and come after us for some rink-a-dink paper chase money laundering problem. That said, my beliefs are not what drives policy or law, so that's not what we're currently living with in the real world. And over here in Thailand, we're still dealing with this ongoing, oh, everything's for money laundering, when in reality, it's my opinion, as I've discussed in many other videos, all of this digitization is just for more totalitarianism, tracking and tracing everything we do. You know, they tried to roll out the digital wallet, which would have been the end game for all of that. And so now they're having to do it through more pedestrian means. But long story short, the upshot for foreigners here in Thailand is bank accounts, yes, apparently are still being closed. They're calling people in. They're asking if they're still on a tourist visa, all under the auspices of discouraging money laundering and so-called scam accounts.